Hey, it's Ron McLean. Welcome to Hockey Talk on the Rock.
With Laura and Keith.
It's interesting.
So let's back up a second.
He played absolutely out of his mind.
It made no sense to me.
And now, here are your hosts.
Here we go. We are back doing Hockey Talk on the Rock, episode number 85. A little bit of a summer break, but that's okay. We are in the dog days of the hockey summer where the news is few and far between. But we got a little bit of catching up to do. So, yes, today is August the 4th. It's a Thursday. We're both on Salt Spring, hosting from separate locations. And as we normally do, we start with Canuck stuff. I will throw to Laura. I'm not sure if there's a ton of Canuck stuff to talk about before we move into the few pieces of big news that we have, but what do you got?
I don't know if there's any Canuck stuff. You threw me off a bit there.
Trying to keep the pattern, you know?
I know. I know they hired a new goalie coach for the AHL, but I forget who it is now.
Yes, he had a name, and I heard it, and I thought to myself, I've not heard that name before.
Yeah, so that's like the only thing I can think of right now.
The other minor news today I heard was Juho Lammikko signed in Finland.
Okay, well that makes sense. Goes.
Yeah, we kind of figured he wouldn't be back since the Canucks went with Lazar, which is probably a better fit.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about how many free agents are still out there right now that like could play fourth line roles in the NHL that haven't signed. Like, for example, Tyler Mott.
I was just going to say, what's up with your boy Tyler Mott? Is he going to come back to Vancouver? Is he just hanging out?
You know, maybe he's one of those guys who overplayed his hand a bit and he will come back to Vancouver. But yeah, there's a bunch of dominoes that still have to fall. And yeah, there's so many players left out there that still have to sign. I know there's theories about certain players, which I think we'll probably get into in the end, where they already have deals, like handshake deals or whatever with teams, and their teams are just trying to figure out the cap.
Right.
And, you know, maybe that's holding up everyone else. But there's still a lot that has to happen, even though, you know, we're getting to the point of the off season where there isn't much news. So
totally. Well, I mean, that could segue if you want right into some of those handshake speculated deals, and then the big one, Nazem Kadri. I've read that it sounds like the Islanders and him. What do you got?
That's, to me, I hear that it's like the Islanders is done deal kind of thing, but they need to figure out, because they have Dobson and then like someone up front that they have to sign 2 RFAs. Is he going to take like all their caps? So they basically have to move someone.
Okay. I like there's teams like that.
Yeah.
But the only thing I would throw out there is, I think I was talking to you a while back about how it sounded like Colorado and Paul Stastny had a handshake deal for a center role, small contract if Kadri didn't fall through. And it makes me wonder, like, well, if Kadri is not going back to Colorado, how come the Stastny thing hasn't happened yet?
Yeah, no, that's true. So, but again, like, you know, before the Klingberg thing happened, which we're going to get into later, I'm sure, I was kind of thinking, you know, if Kadri hasn't signed yet, like maybe he's going to get Taylor Hall. Like maybe it will be one of those situations where he has to go somewhere on a 1-year deal and try again next year or whatever. But I still feel like someone's going to make room for him. But I agree. I don't know why the Stastny thing hasn't happened if for sure he's not going back to Colorado.
Right.
So
the only thing that makes me a little bit skeptical, I guess, but you know, time will tell. It's such a weird off season, I guess, partially in due to the cap not going up, but everyone knowing how much money got made last year.
Yeah,
I mean, it's going up $5 million, but how many teams are like either at the cap, over the cap, and still have players sign, or like over the cap and have their roster set, but need to do something still?
It's a lot. Like a lot of the league is in that situation, which is why I think it's so stuck. But then you have teams like, you know, like Arizona and Chicago who could definitely take on the players, but aren't. Yeah. And so it's going to be interesting to see like those teams that are, you know, in the Bedard chase, basically, if they can't help themselves but sign a few pieces here, because there's good players to be had for not very much, it would appear.
Yeah,
Unless, yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
see. I guess the other big speculated one. Well, there's two, and I feel like one's a for sure, and one I don't feel like it's going to happen, and I have no reason to feel that way really for both. But Patrice Bergeron, I feel like for sure will be going back to Boston, and
Yeah.
they just agreed publicly for some reason.
Yeah.
And then Krejci, I feel like won't go back to Boston.
Oh,
because
really?
that's
Interesting.
heavily speculated, but I don't know why I feel that way. I just don't think it can happen.
Yeah, see, I feel like they're both gonna be back there.
Okay.
But again, I don't really have any reason. It's just that it's been talked about to death, and I think it's gonna happen.
Mhm.
But again, I don't really get why they haven't announced it, because Boston's a team that they're gonna be under the cap because they're gonna have so many players on LTIR
Right.
to start the year, right?
Maybe you never know. They could be a wild card, and why Kadri hasn't done anything yet because they haven't got a finalized Krejci answer or something.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see how this falls into place, and if we ever find out what the big holdup is for some of these free agents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then the other big name besides Kadri that we're waiting on forever was Klingberg.
Yeah.
I got my Ducks jersey on is
Mhm.
because it chose Anaheim for a 1-year, $7 million deal. I was, really hoping he was going to go to Ottawa, especially since like the way Philly's been going and Drew's on Ottawa now. That I feel like
Yep.
I'm an Ottawa guy for a few years, and I was like,
Yeah.
man, Klingberg on Ottawa would be so sweet. And I was really like putting
Yeah.
my eggs in that basket. But then he went to Anaheim, and he'll obviously like be the top dog and probably have a good year and get to go back and do this all again next year. But it was surprising.
Yeah, and I mean, there's rumors out there, right, that like Dallas did offer him like a 7-year contract at like seven something, and he said no because he wanted the 8 years.
Right.
And I think, yeah, he's one of those guys that did overplay his hand. It seems like he expected it to be different, and I know he fired his agent like right before signing this deal, so he must have felt similarly, I suppose. And yeah, it's a good move. I mean, for Anaheim for a couple of reasons. Like, number one, like they have Jamie Drysdale there, and he can learn from Klingberg. So you're bringing in someone there to kind of show him the ropes. And like I would assume at the deadline they can retain 50% of his contract and move him for. You're basically buying picks or buying prospects with this contract. So it's like, again, if you have cap space right now, it's just worth so much because you can, set yourself up so well in the future. So it's a smart move on those ways.
Totally. And they got a big minute spot to fill with Josh Manson going out the door and Hamilton home, really.
Yeah. So
he'll get minutes. And I mean, it's basically the defense version of the Taylor Hall deal. Right?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, the thing about it too, right, is they didn't give him a no trade because like Buffalo kind of screwed themselves over because Taylor Hall's like, I only want to go to Boston or whatever. And so then they couldn't really get much back from him. I think that Anaheim will do better. And, maybe the cap goes up more next year, but Klingberg will be 30 next year. So, I wonder how long and how much of a deal he's going to get next summer. But if he puts up good numbers, I'm sure. I mean, he's a right hand, like he's a righty demon. He should be making good money. So it's just, the flat cap and all that, as you can say.
Yeah. I think we both would agree that Anaheim is not going to be like a playoff team.
No.
They certainly have some offensive skill. So I feel like he'll build up value and he'll get them a pretty good return at the deadline.
Yeah. And also, like, it's in his best interest, or like the team's best interest for him to do well. So he's going to get played.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So that is the big deal. And then the biggest news that we haven't even mentioned and will go around was, the news came out that Matthew Tkachuk was going to not file arbitration. He told the Flames not going to sign long term. We all kind of, being Canucks fans, you and I especially, laughed because we're like, Calgary's painted into a corner. They're So
Yeah.
they're not going to get a good return. And
Yeah.
then that Friday night, they pulled off the shocking blockbuster in the first ever official sign and trade NHL deal,
Yeah.
where they got 8 million by 8 years by 9.5 million, and shipped to Florida for Huberdeau, Uyghur, a first, and a prospect that, from what you tell me, could be an NHL player and a difference maker. I haven't looked into him, but it was shocking to say the least. What's your take on it? Because I've marinated on this one for a while.
Yeah, so I've several thoughts. I mean, when it first came out, I thought it was fake. Like I thought I was reading a fake account when I saw that Huberdeau and Uyghur and the first were included. It's like, holy crap. And like I know Matt Tkachuk is younger, obviously, and he was an RFA, and now they've locked him up for 8 years. So you've locked him up for his prime at a pretty good cap hit, and he is one of those players in the NHL. Like they keep calling him a unicorn. I don't know if that's exactly the right term, but there aren't that many players that bring everything that Tkachuk brings. So in that regard, I think it's smart for Florida. And I think that Florida, probably had talked with Huberdeau and Uyghur and was thinking that the cap was going to be too much for them. So they kind of, I think, took a step back probably in the short term, but in the long term, they're probably going to be better. Now, Calgary, again, I totally was like you. I was so excited for Calgary to suck. And I was like, Gaudreau leaving, and now Tkachuk's gonna leave, and he's not gonna get much back for him that they should, and all that. And then you see the return, it's like, wow. And I mean, like, if one of those two players stay, I think it's a win for Calgary.
Yeah.
Not even if both. I mean, the Flames, like, defensively last year were one of the best teams in the league, and then you add Uyghur to that. I think they're gonna be. I mean, you take out Gabranson and you replace it with Uyghur, they're going to be better on defense. And then Huberdeau essentially replaces Gaudreau. So, yeah, you're down. As you said, you're down a Tkachuk. But I think they'll be, especially in the Pacific, I think they'll be a good team. And if they can't sign both of those players, it's going to be fascinating to watch what they do at the deadline. Especially if they are in a playoff spot. Yeah. But overall, I give the win to Calgary because of what you said, because of Tree Living not really being able to do much, and he pulled off a pretty good deal for his team.
Especially we haven't mentioned, but like gave him 5 teams that he would sign long term.
So he basically was giving himself a essentially a no trade clause.
Yeah.
And like Tkachuk, like this is the other thing. I know there's a lot of talk like, oh, Florida didn't like how they played against Tampa or how they played in the playoffs and they need more sandpaper, and Tkachuk's gonna fix that. But Tkachuk wasn't good in the playoffs either. And I think that's part of it that for me I find hard. They're like, oh, he's the perfect player. And yeah, like on paper, he is the perfect player to fix that. But he has had his struggles in the playoffs too. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah. My opinion and everything, I think, is not too far off from what you think. They've locked him up at a cap hit for 8 years, until he's 32. That as the cap will start going up. So as the cap goes up and up over the years, that deal is going to look better and better, especially percentage wise against the cap. And he probably signed for a little less than he could have going to a no state tax team.
Yeah.
With Tampa, we've seen that plays a big factor.
Yeah.
So yeah, Florida, I think they'll be a worse team next year, but I mean they were the President's Trophy winning team this past season, so
yeah,
it's not like I feel like they're gonna fall out of the playoffs with this move. And like you say too, after this year, both those guys, Uyghur and Huberdeau, were up on their deals, and Huberdeau is going to be 30. I think Uyghur is 27 or 28 at the end of the year. So they would have had to give how it's going in Vancouver with JT Miller. He's 29. Huberdeau's going to want the 7 or 8 years going into his late 30s he was a superstar this year. And they probably just looked at the trade-off in terms of money alone for those Tkachuk versus Huberdeau and went
Yeah.
Or we get a player that's 5-6 years younger. It's
Yeah.
probably cost us a little more. And
Yeah.
then we're gonna have a guy in his early 30s versus
Yeah.
his late 30s. Uyghur, I feel like maybe the fan base might have played a role there because against that Tampa series,
Yeah, he wasn't very good.
he wasn't very good, and they tore him apart, especially on social media for some of the giveaways he made and
Yep.
for costing the series and games and blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think like you say, he's going to add to a defense core. Like I was looking at the top six they have, and especially the highest paid guys, like 4.5 million a year or something.
Yeah.
The amount of money they're spending on that defense core and who they have on there is pretty amazing.
Yeah, totally.
So it sucks. It sucks for Vancouver because they're division rival.
Yeah.
And Calgary has really, really strong defense up and down with a really good Vezina finalist goalie.
Yeah.
They're going to be a little weaker up front. I think Mangiapane will be good, but I don't think he's going to replace what Tkachuk did.
No.
And I don't think Toffoli is as good as he ever used to be. So I don't know if he's going to step up in a way that they probably expect him to. So
yeah.
It'll be interesting. It'll be more textbook Daryl Sutter hockey. I feel like where you're going to see a lot more of the traditional LA Kings 2-1, 1-0
Yeah.
type wins for them.
Yeah.
They'll probably win a lot, but
yeah, I could see that top line still being really good, but I don't know about the depth beyond that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you.
So it was fascinating, and I think you said, and it was read everywhere, probably the biggest trade of the salary cap era. Like, when do you see 2 100-point players traded for each other and this and that? You can almost say the last big similar deal was the RFA kind of thing with Patrick Laine for Pierre-Luc Dubois, because that was pretty big.
Yeah, it's not that big.
Yeah, but they're not. Those guys weren't, nor are they still superstars. Like Huberdeau and stuff were probably both top 5, top 6 in scoring this year.
Yeah.
So
they were. I think it was 3rd for 7th or something in scoring.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Totally crazy. Yeah, very big shocker. Very interesting. I like when that type of stuff happens because it's just it doesn't happen enough in hockey. It felt like an NBA type trade.
Yeah.
So it was cool, and it was definitely something to chew on for a while in the boring part of summer.
Yeah.
And then other than that, we're just going through RFA arbitration and settling and this and that. I've definitely noticed that since Jesper Bratt settled with New Jersey on his 1 year, $5.45 million deal, that the Bratt plus this plus that for JC started popping up all over the place again.
Yeah. As soon as it happened, I think Miller was trending on Twitter again. Right. It's oh my god.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but there's nothing really from a Canucks perspective to be waiting on with this RFA stuff, and really league wide there isn't too much. Pierre-Luc Dubois accepted his 1 year, $6 million with Winnipeg, despite everyone thinking he wanted out. He was all backpedaling, saying he didn't say that.
Yeah.
So it is what it is, and it's August 4th, so we're a month away from training camp, maybe a little more, and 2 months from real hockey. So we know some stuff's going to start to happen here because it's kind of got to.
Yeah, it has to, and I think I still think there's going to be some trades, just because again of the cap situation, right? There kind of has to be some money moving around, and I'm going to be interested in some of these teams that kind of looked at this year and thought they wanted to be bad if they can't help themselves with picking up some players. Because I mean, even Bjorkstrand, right? I don't know if we talked about that, but
that was another one. It was actually surprising, the cost.
Yeah, it was so low, but it's because Seattle was willing to take on that cap.
Right.
So it's okay, well, there's players to be had, and they're pretty good players.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway.
So sorry, what was it? Columbus and Bjorkstrand to Seattle for
a third and a fourth, I think.
Third and a fourth. That's right. Because I was surprised how low it was, because he's kind of been their 1-2 centerman.
Yeah, he's been decent at putting up points for the last couple years, and I mean, I get that they did it because they got Gaudreau, who's gonna be better than him, arguably. and then you had to give line A's raise, so someone had to leave. But you like it's basically like you're not managing your assets, right? Because you can't get what you want back for them.
Yeah.
Which um
And for the record, I don't think that trade's going to make Seattle playoff team.
I don't think so either. I think that they might be better this year than they were last year, only because like they're gonna have Beniers at center. We'll see what he can do in a full year. They'll have Bjorkstrand, like they should, and then they'll have Burakovsky or whatever. They have some more players who can actually like put the puck in the net. I don't think they're gonna be a playoff team, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're better. That's all I'm gonna say.
You think Shane Wright's on the opening day roster?
I think Shane Wright might be, but we'll see.
Do you think he plays the full season?
You know, I kind of think for his development he shouldn't, only because of all the COVID stuff that's happened.
Yeah.
And I think you should just send him down and see if he can dominate in juniors again and give him that boost of confidence that he might have lost over the last year. And I think that's probably the right call.
Yeah.
But
depends how he looks early, I guess, and depends how starved they are for offense.
yeah. But yeah, it'll be interesting to watch the down south neighbors of the Canucks.
Mm-hmm. Other than that, I feel like we stretched this one out pretty well.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have anything else really to cover because we just covered.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, well, we'll get together. We'll be back for episode 86 next time. Like we just said, hopefully through August here, some more stuff starts happening and pieces start to fall into place, and we'll do it all again next time.
Sounds good.
All right, Hockey Talk on the Rock, episode 86. Thanks for listening.
Woo.